Right? Hello. Anyways, all right. I shouldn't delay this because we got to get to it. The Kings are 0-2.
Mm-hmm.
An 11-0 run at the end of the third quarter against the Minnesota Timberwolves cast their fate on opening night. 21-0. 21-0. Now, I'm old enough to remember when arguably the greatest basketball coach of all time, certainly the most successful, some may offer, Phil Jackson. He had a philosophy where he oftentimes would not bail his team out with a timeout. He purposely would not call a timeout and say, figure it out, guys. Figure it out on the floor. I'm not bailing you out. But that was Michael Jordan's Bulls, and that was Shaq and Kobe's Lakers. That is not this team. And I'm old enough to remember when Mike Brown would call an early timeout, and we'd go, wow, that was really quick. In what world do you let another team go on it? In what world does it make sense? 11-0 run? Okay. But I feel like 11-0 is like, that's right around. I think when you get into double digits, it should almost be a mandatory rule. Once the run against you gets to double digits, meaning 10-0, by the way, it would be acceptable to call a timeout at 10-0. Hell, it'd be acceptable to call it at 8-0. But once it gets to 10-0, you either call a timeout there or you call a timeout if one more basket happens and you have not responded. In other words, 11-0, 12-0, 13-0, whatever. 21-0. Was he distracted by a pretty flower? Was it one of those, like, was he playing Royal Match? Yeah.
I can't remember when the time. I mean, there was one, but when it happened.
Yeah, it was.
Like, was it 14? I think it was from 14. 7 up to 7 down.
I think it was 14.
And especially, I mean, this is me. I've never been a head coach, certainly. So this is opinion based, not factual based. I think it's different too, Dave, when you're on the road. Like, I stopped that sooner. If you're at home, you get a little antsy. You hear the fans getting antsy. But part of it on the road is to do it to quiet everybody down. Like, there's a rhythm to the game. The Lakers were certainly in a rhythm, and LeBron was as hot as he's ever been.
Yes.
And the fans are just feeding off it. Timeout. Even if it cools it for whatever, they'll do T-shirt, whatever. It doesn't matter what they're doing in there. You've stopped it. You can design a play to best suit to stop the next. Even if it's, 21-4.
That's right.
It's like, well, you got 4 points because you called a timeout and you drew up 2 great plays or whatever the case may be. But
hell, fake a quick injury like they do in soccer. Let somebody go down in the middle of the floor, have the doctors go out, limp him off, and then, give him the magic spray. He's fine.
Yeah. Do
something to stop the momentum. Now, my other big gripe, and this was a gripe before the season started. I'm not talking about the interior defense, by the way. And I looked at that too. More on that in a second. What I do not want to happen, because this happens every year in any sort of situation where if something goes wrong or if something is going badly, there is always the savior.
Mm-hmm.
Every year it's somebody. There's always the GOAT. Well, if it wasn't for this person. We are only 2 games into the season, and it is incredibly clear that the savior in a lot of circles is Keon Ellis, and the GOAT is Kevin Huerter. So those have been clearly defined.
The different version of GOAT.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, not the Gen Z version, but the GOAT as in not the good one.
Right.
In game 1 or against the LA Lakers, Keon Ellis was a healthy scratch. In game 1 against Minnesota, Keon Ellis did not start, though he was starting the entire preseason. Keon Ellis played 11 minutes, was 0 of 1, had 2 steals, a rebound, and 2 points. Now, per 33, which is a very standard figure, per 33, that just makes it so I can multiply everything times 3. He would have finished for 33 minutes. He would have finished with 6 points, 3 rebounds, and 6 steals. The Kings have given up 117 points, and the Kings have given up 131 points, including, by the way, a 44 and 36 point quarter against the Lakers, the second and the fourth. I'm not saying that Keon Ellis would have had this team at 2-0. I'm not even saying Keon Ellis would have prevented 0-2. I'm also not saying that Kevin Huerter is the reason why they lost either game, although the first game, understandably so, he was rusty. In the second game, Kevin Huerter had 14 points on 4 of 7 from beyond the arc. That's great. Kevin Huerter, and I heard you doing this, when we were talking on Friday, This is a goofy stat, was minus 29 in 26 minutes. The rest of the starters, minus 5 for Fox, plus 8 for Murray, minus 9 for DeRozan, plus 11 for Sabonis, plus 20 for Malik Monk. If you're not going to start Keon Ellis, then you got to start Malik Monk. You got to start one of those two, in my opinion. I understand that. I understand what you're quote unquote doing to the bench, but if you're good enough to start, how are you not good enough to go against another team's second unit? If you can't excel against the second unit, it's not a finite binary decision, Jason. Right. But I don't understand most of that argument, and defense is a thing. You have something in front of you.
No, obviously Kevin Huerter, I mean, minus 29 is pretty brutal.
Sure.
Someone had to be on the floor in the 21-0 run, and obviously I know Sabonis wasn't. So I'm looking at Len. He was at minus 9. There's other people. There's part of what was all going on in that 21-0 run. It's a question I've brought up before, and I kind of want to bring up again. And I don't know. I've had fun with you before when you're talking about like Ben Simmons. Look what he do defensively. Right. And we've mentioned Matisse Thybulle. Pick your whatever great defensive player you think this league has.
Yes.
And if the Kings were to acquire that player, I'm honestly questioning if they would play them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all agree Keon's their best perimeter defender.
That's right.
One of them.
He and Keegan Murray.
Yeah. And so I would think kind of non-negotiable he plays every game. Now that could be 6 minutes.
Sure.
That could be 28 minutes.
Sure.
But I feel like he plays every game.
That's right.
It's game 2 and he didn't play.
Yeah.
We need a rim protector. Okay, they get Dikembe Mutombo in his prime.
Yeah.
Does he play? So is this and people said Mike Brown's a defensive-minded coach. Is he?
Is he?
Where'd
really?
that come from anyway, by the way? I mean, I'm not saying he's not. I'm sure he wants defense. I'm not.
Of course.
But I just think it's interesting. And even at the beginning, we kind of thought it was weird when he played KZ Okpala. The thought probably was 2 years ago, one, Keegan had a hurt thumb. But after that, it's like, well, he's a pretty good perimeter defender. Okay. After that, he wasn't even on the team at the end of the year.
That's right.
So do they want to play their best defensive players at any point?
There's also, to your point, Jason, by the way, I think I should add this in to be fair to the argument. Let's also remember in game 1, smaller sample size, Keon Ellis was minus 12 in 11 minutes. Mm-hmm. So it's almost the exact same thing per minute. But Jason, there are numbers, a large sample size from last year that shows this team's defensive improvement with Keon Ellis. Correct. Now, I believe the proper retort would be, yeah, Dave, but what was their record in those games? And I would then retort, yes, but we didn't have DeMar DeRozan instead of Harrison Barnes. Mm-hmm. So I think what I thought Monty was doing in part with the DeRozan acquisition is he was at best lateral, if not taking a slight step back, Barnes for DeRozan when it came to defense, but taking a huge step forward when it came to offense, which would allow them to play Keon Ellis to make up. Now you're balanced. It's levers. Mike Brown has done a terrible job, in my opinion, of coaching in the first 2 games. It's not all his fault. He ain't on his game. In my opinion, Mike Brown ain't been on his game. Going back and looking at it time and time again, whether it's lapsing through these runs, whatever the hell's going on behind the scenes, and his rotations, I understand he's trying to figure it out. I understand it's a work in progress, and I understand that this time next week we could be saying something completely different. So I'm not saying things like fire Mike Brown. Mike Brown is terrible. Mike Brown doesn't know. What I am saying is thus far, I have not been impressed with his nor their performance. It's one thing when you're getting beaten by a better team. It's another thing when you're also beating yourself. Stop hitting yourself.
Yes.
As we all used to say to our siblings. We'll take a break. Much more on this later, and we'll want your thoughts as well at